that bring together the whole world. I extend a warm welcome to all the guests and attendees who are attending this very prestigious session on US India, Indian Americans, Small Community Boundless Contributions. As we celebrate the Silver Jubilee of INBUSH era, the 25 years of excellence, we honor leaders from United States and from India who have made a mark in their own domain. On this note, I would request our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Asim Chauhan, sir, to give his special remarks. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Marut, and so wonderful to be with everyone on this very distinguished panel. And Dr. Gurinder Singh, I must really compliment you at the outset for the 25th year of INBUSH, the International Business Horizons Conference that you have been organizing. I recall the early days when the vision was there, maybe much earlier before its time, that can we connect academia around the world and think about research at a global scale to bring this august set of people on one platform. And 25 years later, it is going from strength to strength. We are so happy to have some of our very old friends and supporters to the Amity Group on the panel here today, and we will be hearing from all of them. But I could not be more delighted that the quality of people that are here to address our students who are online in such large numbers from the 40 locations in India and 18 Amity locations globally to hear our wonderful speakers today. We are today talking about the India-US relationship in particular, and I think we stand at a very interesting point in time to have this discussion. But irrespective of the background noise, I think the very strong commitment from both sides in terms of academic collaboration, research collaboration is stronger than ever. Professor Jagdish Seth is there, and he is really a legend. We have been observing for so many years, and not only in terms of his academics and research work, but also directly having an ear of the leadership in India and helping drive the destiny of nation by giving strategic inputs on what can be done between India and the US and in India itself in particular. So Professor Seth, we are so delighted that you are online, and I am personally very, very happy to see you again. Professor Raghu Sundaram is an amazing academician. We are seeing his meteoric rise in academia. Every time we meet, there is a new designation. And Professor Sundaram, you are an amazing person. You have the quality of always saying, how can I help? And, what can I do to support? And really, it's wonderful. We are so happy that our campus in New York is coming now close by to you. As some of you may know, but I will share here, the Amity Group with 200,000 students now, with 13 universities in India, but also 18 campuses in other parts of the world outside of India, including Dubai and Singapore and London and Uzbekistan and Kenya, South Africa, Amsterdam, has a 175-acre campus on Long Island in New York. We had acquired this from St. John's University a few years ago. And there we are doing two interesting projects. One is 100 acres of that. We are bringing a high-end boarding school of the likes of an Andover or Exeter. We have tied up with the Harrow School in UK. Harrow and Eton Harrow is, of course, a very reputed brand of 450 years, many prime ministers and famous people who are alumni. So last year we began Harrow in India as one of the most prestigious schools in India. And this September, we are launching Harrow, New York, on the Long Island campus. We received our charter from the Regents of New York just early January. So I'm happy to share, maybe for the first time on an open platform, that our school is opening this year itself. And anyone in the New York area, we welcome you to visit and be our guest. It's really a special site. And on the other part of the location, on 75 acres, we are working on a global research hub, thinking of how can we bring researchers, scientists from around the world together to brainstorm how can we solve the critical problems of our time, may it be climate change, may it be environment, may it be AI ethics and other areas. And already we are working with some wonderful minds in the US as part of this global research hub, which was the dream of our founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhanji, who said, if we want to do world-class research, we have to go closer to our partners and set up labs and facilities nearby so that it is easier for us to collaborate with the very best. Um, I see Professor Mohan Bir Soni. It is wonderful to see you again. And I recall our last meeting and your dynamism, and really wonderful to have you here. Mr. Sabir Bhatia, you need no introduction. It is really great. You were one of the very early movers in the technology space in India. And today we see a lot of startups and developments, but I think you were a pioneer and you inspired generations of people to come after you to answer the question of how can we take global expertise and change not only India but the world with technology. So we look forward to hearing from you. Professor Rahul Srivastav, you are ready for action. You are standing, and we will look forward to hearing from you. And Mr. Tom Dretler, you are again a repeat attendee at Amity conferences. We appreciate your presence here. So, Professor Singh, given the shortage of time and hearing that some of our esteemed participants may have to leave a little bit earlier, I will pause and I will come in again at the end to share broader views. But I would request, because it is more interesting for our students to hear from our panel, that we go immediately to the panel interactions and then I will come back at the end.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chancellor, sir. With this, I would request Group Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Gurinder Singh, sir, to give his welcome address and introduction to the theme before we start the discussions for this beautiful evening that we have all planned. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Marut. And once again, very warm welcome to our all friends from USA. INBUSH, as most of you have already participated in it, it is one of the largest Word Summits which we have been organizing from the last more than 25 years. So once again, very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of our founder, Dr. Chauhan, on behalf of our chancellors, all 13 universities, their vice chancellors, on my own behalf as a group vice chancellor. We will be discussing today that how Indian education ecosystem is changing, especially in view of the new education policy. And with the changes which have taken place, what are the opportunities which are in front of American universities as well as in front of the Indian universities? As you know, that our Honorable Prime Minister is focusing today on bringing some of the top brands to India. We have seen few universities already coming in and opening a campus. So there are three models which are there. One is in the gift city, where the government is inviting universities to come up, maybe at a small place, offering few courses or skill-based courses. The other model which we have seen is that few foreign universities coming up and opening up the independent campuses. So in the last few months, we have seen one or two universities coming up, one in Gurgaon, other one is coming up in Noida, opening up a campus. But the third, the most prominent model, which I think that the most of the top rated universities are looking at, is that how they can offer their dual degrees, joint degrees, and how they can have a relationship, institutional relationship, where they can give the campus feeling, and at no cost they can have a campus, physical campus in each other's campus. So we will start with the opportunities which are in front of them and how we can strengthen our research. INBUSH is basically a research-driven conference where we concentrate on how we can bring the word together, can do some of the greatest research work, can share our knowledge. You'll be happy to know that in this conference, we are releasing 7 very high-powered, high-impact research journals. There are more than 1,000 research papers, about 800 case studies which are being presented. But I will first come to Professor Raghu Sundaram. I know that he is here for a very short time. Professor Raghu Sundaram, as all of us know, is a senior vice chancellor and head of global strategy for New York University. We know him for many years. Whenever we meet him, we have to learn from his side new theorems of education. He always come up with some exciting ideas. But we would like to hear more from you, Dr. Sundaram, for initially few minutes, that what you need to communicate to all the global leaders who are present and are watching you live from the different locations. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gurinder. That's for that lovely introduction. And really, most of all, for the opportunity to speak at this conference. This is the third time I've been fortunate enough to be invited, and this being the 25th anniversary, I think it's a very special occasion. And I also want to apologize that I can't be with you in person today. And also special thanks to Dr. Asim Chauhan and Dr. Atul Chauhan and to Professor Marut Bisht, and equally to all my fellow panelists. So the theme of this year's summit that we were asked to discuss is around Indian Americans, a small community and boundless contributions. And I just want to make a few remarks on this subject. It's no secret in any sense that Indian Americans have been extraordinarily successful in America, measured by almost any metric, and across the board, not just in a few fields. Everyone knows the list of CEOs, corporate executives, and the founders of some of America's most iconic companies in finance, technology, venture capital, consulting, airlines, so many others. In this context, I must say it's particularly delightful to see one of the earliest heroes of Indian American entrepreneurs, Sabir Bhatia, on this panel. Several people in my family, we still continue using Hotmail as our primary means of communication. Tens of thousands of medical professionals, some 5% of America's doctors are Indian Americans. My own profession, the academy, has a significant proportion of Indian Americans in almost every discipline, from Nobel laureates like Subramaniam Chandrasekhar and Venki Ramakrishnan, Nobel Prize winners like S.R.S. Vardhan, and so many others of extraordinary distinction, like two of my fellow panelists, Professor Soni and Professor Sheth. It's delightful to share a panel with you. Indian Americans have also more recently started taking on significant leadership roles in the academy, from Renu Khator in Houston to Sunil Kumar at Tufts. Recently, I don't know how many of you saw this, the Financial Times actually had an entire article on the extraordinary number of business school deans who happen to be Indian in origin. And of course, the list goes on and on. Indian Americans have done very well in the humanities, in the performing arts, in government, in law, in the service industry, and so much else. And most recently, even in politics and on both sides of the aisle, Kamala Harris, Pramila Jayapal, Nikki Haley, Rohit Khanna, so many others. In recent years, the success of Indian Americans has attracted considerable attention, with so many books and articles devoted to the topic. Some of these have the unfortunate tone of being chest thumping and self-congratulatory, but much of it is actually excellent analysis. And truth be told, it's not clear what one can actually add to a discussion that has not already been said. So rather than focus on the analysis itself, I just want to give you my own subjective thoughts on three factors that I think that have been extraordinarily important in enabling Indian Americans to succeed. The first of these, perhaps the most understated, but I think perhaps the most important, is America itself. Although it's rarely mentioned explicitly, an enormous part of the credit, as it were, should go to the US for creating a system, a culture, an atmosphere in which immigrants are welcomed and given every possible opportunity to succeed. This is true of the large companies and institutions, but it's also true even in small communities across America. Some years ago, I remember having this fascinating discussion in my office with a colleague, an Indian American of Gujarati origin, whose family in the 1980s had first set up a motel in rural Indiana, where they were the only non-white family who'd been welcomed by the mayor of the town for bringing in investment and creating jobs and actually creating their first motel. Over the years, they built up a chain of motels in small town Indiana and Illinois, almost entirely in the Midwest. So it's not only the coastal and the large cities where Indian Americans have thrived. Much of this is because, as I said, of the attitude of America that has created a system which is possible for immigrants to succeed in. A colleague of mine some years ago began a book on economics with the memorable sentence that all economics can be summed up in 4 words. People respond to incentives. Indian Americans have responded to those incentives rather well. And this is reflected in in the attitudes of Indian Americans towards the US, a recent Pew survey noted that a remarkable 86% of Indian Americans have a favorable view of the US, and 56%, almost 3 in 5, have a very favorable view of the US, of the system that has enabled the success to occur. But two of the factors also come from our own Indian upbringing. One is the Indian education system. Uniquely among poor countries in the years after World War II, India invested hugely in its educational system, creating not only the IITs and the IIMs, but scores of other highly competitive higher educational systems across the entire country that churned out thousands of talented graduates. It's often remarked how many CEOs and others are in the US are of Indian origin, but less commonly remarked is almost all of them came here initially as students. Higher education then, as now, forms the most important link between India and the US, and the numbers continue to grow. As many of you are aware, there are over 300,000 students of Indian origin in the US right now, and India has recently overtaken China as the single largest country providing students to the US. The Indian education system has prepared us extraordinarily well to succeed in the competitive atmosphere that is the American higher education system. But the third factor is, I think, the most nebulous and hard to pin down, but in my mind, it is the most important. I cannot comment on people from other parts of the world, from Europe, from Africa, but from India, we are each of us very attached to our own backgrounds as Tamils and Punjabis, as Maharashtrians and Bengalis. But for almost all of us, our first identity is Indian. Yeah. We all grew up speaking at least two, most of us, three languages. We went to schools and colleges with people from other parts of the country who spoke different languages, had different practices, different cultures, celebrated different functions. But we took all that for granted, that this is how life is to be. We never quite paused to think just how amazingly fortunate we have been to have grown up in an atmosphere that was so naturally diverse, that where we took this diversity for granted and that prepared us so well for life in foreign lands. I think that, in my mind, is always, I think of it as the single greatest gift that India gave us. To my fellow panelists out here, I look at the panelists, I look at their last names, and I realize that all of us come from different parts of India. Again, I don't want to make a comment on other parts of the world, but had we been from Europe, we would have thought of ourselves as Swedes and Norwegians, as Danes and Germans, as Italians and Spaniards first, Europeans second. We think of ourselves instead as Indians first and everything else following second. To me, that is the greatest gift that India has given us. The success of institutions like MIT, which have taken on this enormously global attitude from the very beginning, is just a manifestation of that attitude with which we grow up in India. That is, as I said, to me, the greatest gift that India has given us, and reflected, I think, in this panel itself. So thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Raghu Sundaram. I think that you have very rightly set the tone that how Indian Americans, they have contributed towards, not only towards the American economy, but have also contributed towards strengthening Indo-American ties. We'll come back to you on specific questions related with education sector. But we have another stalwart with us, Professor Mohanbir Sahni, who is an academic leader and globally recognized scholar, teacher, consultant, and speaker in business innovation, modern marketing, and artificial intelligence applications in business. Professor Sahni is very well acknowledged for his 7 management books, as well as dozens of influential articles in leading academic journals and managerial publications. Besides his academic contribution, he's also a great poet. He has written a book in poetry called Love, Longing, and Loneliness. And I have gone through this book and read it a number of times. Has got a great human heart. is also a pioneer in online executive education. Those who are in the executive education, they know the kind of content he's creating. He has created more than 15 online executive education courses, has published widely, I think, in almost all the top journals of the world, belonging to the management world. He holds a PhD in marketing from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, an MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and BTech in electrical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology. We from India, we feel so proud on what you have achieved. I'd like to understand from your story that how you came to America, how you contributed in the American economy, and then what are your views that how Indian universities and American universities can come closer?
Thank you, Govinderji, for that overly warm and impressive introduction. I remember Winston Churchill saying, "I wish my parents were here with this introduction. My father would have been impressed, and my mother would have believed it." So anyway, thank you. My journey to the U.S. Is a reflection of the observation that strategy is often constructed in hindsight. So it might, in hindsight, look like a very strategic set of moves, but it was actually quite a sort of like stumbling along. And as a politician once said, we are stumbling, but we are stumbling in the right direction. I finished after I finished business school and engineering in India. I was working for the Tata Administrative Service, and it just something felt that something was missing in a corporate career. The intellectual stimulation, the challenge wasn't enough. So I said, well, what is this thing called a PhD? So I was working in Singapore at that time, and I thought maybe I'll go there, do courses for a couple of years and go into industry. I had no idea what academia was. And frankly, that was the only way I could come to the US without having any money. So while it might sound very fancy that I came with this academic career, but it was just like, if I could have done an MBA, I would have done an MBA, but I didn't have the money. So I came on a scholarship to Wharton, and then, of course, I fell in love with teaching and research and so on. So I think that one thing I've learned in life is that the universe gives you weak signals of opportunity. You have to detect them and just phone in and take advantage. And since then, it has been this country has been very good to me, and the academic system here has been excellent. Really gives you the freedom to thrive, to experiment. One of the things that I've noticed, by the way, in contrast with what was the university system in India, it is changing undoubtedly, is the deep connection with industry and the freedom that you have to consult, to work with industry, to serve on boards and so on. And I think that is something that obviously when you look at Silicon Valley, at Stanford and Berkeley, or at Boston, you look at MIT, you look at Harvard, or even at Northwestern, we have $1 billion in sponsored research every year. So I think that sort of back and forth between industry and academia is very, very important, particularly when you look at domains like I'm very interested in artificial intelligence and what's going on there. And you can't talk credibly about AI in the classroom unless you're sitting down with Microsoft, or you're sitting down with Google, you're sitting down with Adobe and Salesforce. These are all companies I work with very closely, or serving on the board at Reliance Jio, where we're implementing these technologies. So I think that cross-pollination is really, really important, and that is a big learning that I've had. As to the second part of your question, which is these. You talked about the three models of participation and of sort of creating a footprint in India. Maybe I'll take you through sort of Northwestern's experience and as an example of that. Some of you might know that the Kellogg School, along with Wharton, was the founding partner for the Indian School of Business, ISB, 20 plus years ago. Our former dean, two deans actually, Don Jacobs and Deepak Jain, were instrumental in sort of creating and coalescing this idea. And the interesting thing is that, we don't have an ongoing partnership with ISB. We were just kind of like fathers and parents of the institution, and then sort of it grew on its own. So our association with partnering goes back a long way. We were also instrumental in actually upskilling the faculty at IMT Ghaziabad. I remember 25 years ago, the faculty attended all our courses. We shared with them our materials and so on. So those partnerships have been one model. But in those cases, I think that frankly, the institution in India got a lot more out of it than we did, because there was no ongoing revenue sharing, there was no ongoing programs. Our faculty would go and teach, and I taught at ISB for several years. And then what Kellogg evolved was a model for actually creating global partnerships. So we have now six partnerships, from ranging from Toronto to Germany to Beijing and so on, where we have joint degree programs and a partnership with local institutions. And you mentioned the partnership model. The challenge with that model in India, and I'll be very transparent here, is economics. That if we create an executive MBA program in partnership with a university in India, we have to share economics. And the problem is that the cost structure doesn't compute. Because obviously the Indian market doesn't support the price. So the executive MBA at Kellogg is $220,000. Now in India, probably you can get away with 70 or 80K, ISBs are about 50, 60K. So when you do it at 90K, 80K, which is a lot in India, your faculty costs are still the same. They're still and on top of that, you have to pay for travel. So yes, you can complement it with local faculty, but still, if you're splitting revenues and profits, halfway, then that doesn't work. So we have to find innovative models for these partnerships. And in fact, it's very interesting, Gurundarji, that you talk about this. We talk about it today because we are in the throes of examining our strategy for India right now. In 2 weeks, I will be in 3 weeks. We'll be hosting a big conference in Delhi, and where our Dean Francesca, myself, and a few other people will be coming. By the way, all of you are invited. It's called Pragati. It's on March 8th. It's in the JW Marriott in Aero City. So please spread the word. And that is part of, Francesca. I told Francesca, our dean, I said, you have to come to India, and she's very enthusiastic about it. So she's going to be meeting a lot of people. And the model that I'm thinking about, by the way, I haven't socialized this with folks, so I'm speaking as an individual, not on behalf of Kellogg, is that we need to go it alone. We need to go it alone because that's where, frankly, we have the brand and we have the and the economics work better. But we will complement with local faculty. We'll complement it with virtual sessions, so to improve the economics, and then scale it a little bit more than we can scale. So scale, virtualization, and local faculty are the way in which we can make the economics work. And what we want to do also is a real estate light model. So perhaps working with Mukesh and the Geo Institute, getting land from there, or working with some of our partners in. My student, Harsh Binani, he runs SmartWorks, which is one of the largest managed office spaces. In fact, he's going public this year. So he can give us space and equip our, so that's sort of the model we're looking at. But what I just wanted to conclude, is that it is not just a matter of sort of bringing our presence. We want to do it in an innovative way. Setting up real estate, setting up campuses, doing sort of joint degree programs. These are, I think, older ideas. The newer ideas, how do we leverage technology? How do we leverage virtual? How do we leverage asynchronous and blended learning modalities and create where we're able to give the best of what we bring to the party, but in a way that the economics work. Because the willingness to pay and the ability to pay in executive education in India is, by the way, all of my remarks are very specific to business school and executive education. It's a very different story for engineering. It's a very different story for other undergraduate education. We're talking about graduate and executive education. So those are our thoughts. And I think that what I told Francesca is that we cannot afford not be in India. It is the most important market. And I think all of us and every university is convinced of that. It's just what is the right way to find our, to build our footprint. So thank you again for the opportunity to be on the panel. And I hope I didn't offend. I hope I was an equal offender. I offended everybody equally.
To Professor Sani, and I just got a message from Professor Tom Dretler, who is the CEO of and co-founder of Shorelight. and has founded many companies across the globe, and is one of the innovators. As Professor Sani, you were saying, the future of the education is that how you leverage from IT, online education, and how to bring new models, accept the credits across the globe. Mr. Tom Dretler has been coming up with quite a few models, very active in China and India quite recently. And right now, I know that you are in Europe speaking in another conference. We'd like to understand from you before we go to Professor Jagdish Seth, who is another icon from India and so ably leading the education sector in America. Over to you, Mr. Dretler, maybe that you can tell that what, as per you, is the right model of doing collaborations. You have been a good friend of MIT, but over to you. And thank you so much for supporting MIT and INBUSH for so many years.
Well, thank you to all my esteemed colleagues and to Dr. Singh and everyone at Amity and to all the students. You know, I'm at this global conference for CEOs here in Barcelona, and there was just a talk this morning from a global economist who was reminding us that in 2001, Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs is the one who coined the phrase, a Goldman Sachs economist. He's the first one it was a marketing ploy actually, to refer to BRIC countries. There was no S yet for South Africa. And what he was pointing out was that Jim O'Neill got some things right and he got some things wrong. And what he got right was that BRIC countries actually did pretty well. But if you look beneath it, they only did well because of one country. And it's India. They said India did well from 2001 on. The other countries actually didn't. And if you look underneath, it's India lifted up all the BRIC countries, those four, because of, I think, so many of the qualities that we see in Indian people who are driven to be successful and who come to America and assume the kind of roles that some people have been talking about here. I don't say this because I'm an American, but he also pointed out that for the G7 countries that Jim O'Neill was also talking about, if you had gone long on America and India, those would have been the two asset classes to invest in. And if you knew in 2001 where to invest, you would invest it in India and America, and you've become a very wealthy person. And so when we think about the relationship between the two countries, and of course the U.S. has gone through a pretty significant leadership change, and there's a lot that is going on in the United States and around the world because of that leadership change, whether you support the new leader or you don't. Both countries are on winning streaks, and both countries depend on each other, sometimes in ways that aren't always understood. So one of the things that I've learned about the US higher ed ecosystem is that, especially for graduate schools, the United States graduate schools are dependent on Indian students and Chinese students. If all of a sudden tomorrow Indian students stop coming to the United States and Chinese students stop coming to the United States, many graduate programs would shut down. And actually some of our, some not necessarily, you know, some of the top programs, but maybe because in many cases, India and China represent, well, international students will represent 60, 70, 80% of many graduate STEM programs. And the majority of those students will be Indian or Chinese or both. What we have seen in my company, Shorelight, that works with 120 US universities and is a proud partner of Amity, to help those universities find the right talent globally to come to their schools. And then we try to support the students in getting jobs and internships and to be successful at US universities. We have found Indian students to be among the most creative, entrepreneurial students who come to the United States and find jobs and then find the opportunities where, whether they stay in the United States or they go back home, that where they learn the skills that will allow them to truly be leaders in business or whatever field that they choose to be in. And I just saw a note, so I'm going to make sure that my remarks are brief. But what I found in, I'll just say briefly, I've been a CEO for 25 years, a private equity-backed CEO for 25 years. In my career, I've raised more than $150 million of private equity for the various ventures that I have run. And I've had a chance to meet a lot of other people who are running organizations that are hyper growth. And what I've seen in Indian students who come to the United States is a level of drive and entrepreneurialism that I think is, we need a lot more of it here in the United States too. And I'm just so impressed with the quality of the students that I've had a chance to interact with and my peers who happen to be Indian, my CEO peers, whether it's at the global conference that I'm at today, or just over the past 25 years. I'm very bullish on and hopeful for U.S. India relations going forward, and I see so much promise in the young Indian student future leader, and I've had the pleasure of working with so many, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Trettler. And we feel so proud that MAT is a very close partner with your companies. And we have implemented 3 continent programs and quite a few articulation programs. Look forward to further working with you, especially exploring online education and number of other partnership models. But thank you so much for joining. We have
Thank
with
you.
us another iconic leader, academic leader, Professor Jagdish Seth, Padma Bhushan awardee. Professor Seth is one of the most respected names in the American and Indian academic community. People take him as a god in the business education. A professor at Emory University, he is globally known as his scholarly contribution in consumer psychology, competitive strategy, and geopolitical analysis. He has over 60 years of combined experience in teaching and research. And I think there's no one in the world who has got that kind of rich experience of creating new institutions, creating world-class business schools, and his contribution to the academic world is known to everyone. With a lot of respect, we request Professor Jagdish Seth to share his views. First, that how was his journey, and secondly, what models he feels will be successful in strengthening India and American education sector.
Thank you so much for inviting, and my panel members are great. I really enjoyed learning from each one of them. A couple of comments. My journey into the academic world is accidental. I'm a refugee from Burma before World War II, and when Japan rolled over Burma, my family decided not to leave in the beginning when they should have, and ultimately we were forced to leave, catch the last ship, lost everything, struggled very hard from 1941 to 48, moved from Gujarat, where I come from, to Chennai in Madras, which is like a Swedish person living in Sicily. I think Dr. Sundararam mentioned very strongly the diversity within India matures you quite a lot to get along with the world in many ways. I came here accidentally, and my degree was in major in income tax, BCom honors, wanted to become a chartered accountant, and turns out that unfortunately you have to do 3 years of entrepreneurship or articleship in India before you are qualified. Now I come from a Guju family. Working for someone else is a shame. Working for no money is a double shame. So my family decided I should go to America, get my MBA in production management. And the reason for that one is that we had a manufacturing unit that I learned quite a lot, which was primarily making jewelry boxes. So I came to learn production management. We had a capacity problem, modernize it, but I got turned on by psychology. Most influential psychologist on me was Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. So I switched to psychology, behavioral sciences. My minor was in social psych, And then I applied that into the consumer behavior or consumer psychology. But I've been very eclectic in my interest over time. Let me position the conversation at 3 levels. First level is the new triad power that's emerging at a more macro level. The old triad power was the 12 common market countries as one block. North America, primarily America and Canada as the second block. And of course, Japan is a late entrant after World War II. They control 75% of the world GDP and about 45% of the trade. This was as of 1987. It has been gradually receding to a new triad power, which is absolutely incredible. Nobody would have thought that's possible, except maybe Goldman Sachs and BRIC report might have hinted that. And that is the new triad power is India, China, America. In the old triad power, there was a harmony of belief systems, same international governance systems. There was a belief about same ideology, same economic perspectives. The new triad power has legacies of their own. India has its own legacy, China has its own legacy, and US has its own legacy. It's the trilateral relationship between the 3 nations will be very critical to understand all of the rest of the 21st century. In fact, India is becoming more strategic both to China and to America. So I have a policy institute called India, China, America Institute. Originally, we wanted to label it as China, India, America Institute, but it looks like CIA Institute, which is a brand we did not want to own. So we changed to
I think we lost him.
35.
Yeah, President, I think we have lost. Yeah.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
China is $35 trillion, US is about 30 trillion, and India in purchasing poverty based on IFM data is already $15 trillion. And Indian economy is underrepresented because there is more cash economy component compared to the other 2 economies. So that's at a macro level. Surprisingly, the rest of the world, especially China and America, need India more so than ever, as you saw in the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington in February. And the body language that was given by the 2 governments is very clear that we'll be able to have a more convergence, more partnerships between the 2 nations, which will facilitate what we do. So that's the one key point I wanted to mention. Second thing is that the Indian diaspora is a very critical asset in this journey. Worldwide, Indian diaspora is already 35 million people. All over the world, it is truly global and contributes about $100 billion as payment back into the India, which is a major foreign exchange balance of power. Balance is very key. So we need to watch that. Our expectations are that that's going to grow from $100 billion annual contribution to $500 billion. It is truly global. And I'll make a comment here. When Neil Armstrong landed on Moon, the first person to greet him was Mr. Patel. Mr. Patel said, "Welcome. I already have built a motel around here and a room is reserved for you." That's a joke, but it's a reality also. In any remotest part of the world, actually, you go, there's always some Indian family who is already installed themselves, like rural health that was talked about, for example, or anything, motels, health, hospitals, etc. So that's very key to understand. This diaspora power is very important for the future of India and for the future of the US economy also. Now I'll come to the specific areas of education. My colleagues have already talked about many opportunities. I will look at it slightly differently. The biggest opportunity is not in higher education, as we talk about, but is in vocational technical education. It's how to, that's very important. We have not modernized how to. Getting more out of workers without a college degree going up to a diploma. In fact, I have a book coming out in about April, May. My colleague Samik Som from Nirma Institute, we worked together for 3 years. I'm very passionate because South Korea is an example, using vocational technical training in 35 years, went from a feudal society to the most modern society that one can imagine. So the backbone is blue-collar work, as we call it, but not limited to technical. Today's automobile is a computer. The traditional way of changing oil, the mechanic cannot understand it. But so is true of appliances. So is true, in fact, of toilet seats now. Everything is getting smart. So you need an education in learning technology embedded into all of the devices that we use in a daily way. Housing construction is getting more modern. You need reskilling and upskilling. That's very important. So the largest opportunity in India in education is vocational education and training. Please watch that. We did research in 20 countries. And we found consistently, starting with Germany, England during the Industrial Revolution, and America, of course. And then, but we looked at all other countries in Africa, in Asia, etc. And Singapore becomes a very good role model to say how this can be constantly improved over time rather than one time. Second area, equally important and very large, is online education. Online education will grow just like e-commerce has grown from brick and mortar retailing. Online education is going to become very large scale. In the management area, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where I taught for many years, decided they are just not viable in a brick and mortar setting to do the MBA program, executive MBA program. Therefore, they decided to go online. Out of nowhere, suddenly, there were 6,000 students registered, getting the degree, which is highly respected, and the cash flow is very positive. So the economics are more in favor of online education as one more option. And the last area is something that I've been advocating more recently. Namely that if you want to invite top universities worldwide, but definitely from the United States, more likely it's going to be the issue of where they locate. As Swani just mentioned, I'm also advocating that what they need is land and a building. All of the IIMs, Amity, for example, both private and the government institutions have significant land acquisitions. When they build the campuses, there was a requirement of 55, 60, 100 acres. Most IIMs have 100 acres. A lot of land is, infrastructure is already in place. What you have to do is to invite these foreign universities or US universities to co-locate and become more like a renters lease arrangement. And it's already happening because the biggest constraint is the American universities' capital dollars. Investing capital dollars is not viable because it competes with capital dollars to be invested in other locations within the state, for example, if you're a state university. And if you're a private university, you have opportunities in many other countries. So one has to avoid that capital dollar as a key bottleneck, which can be done very easily by land lease program. And cafeterias are the same. You have a regular campus, let's say IIT, IIM. Now you have a very large, well-respected university, let's say Wharton, Northwestern, Stanford, whatever they are. And you can blend the infrastructure very, very well. So that's the idea that I've been advocating very strongly. Now, why this is very important? Mainly because, again, as Dr. Sundaram mentioned, one of the reasons why we all succeed is America itself. It gives us the opportunity, the autonomy. We bring in a good education. For example, I studied free totally in India. The foundation education was very valuable. Mine was non-engineering, but it came out to be very valuable when I came here. We're all hardworking people. Our parents always have invested in education. So we have the value system to say education matters. But we have been entrepreneurial. We have succeeded in so many walks of life. So Indian diaspora, especially American Indian diaspora, is very important to understand. For example, not just in technology, but look at the corporate leadership. It's incredible. Across the board, not just technology, Silicon Valley companies, but brick and mortar companies also. The next CEO is likely to be of Indian origin, trained in India, probably an immigrant, learned the ropes from a multinational corporation, and ultimately rises to be a CEO. We are very, very good in arts and endowment. Top Booker Awards, Pulitzer Award are won by Indians pretty regularly nowadays. So again, we have to look at arts and culture, entertainment area. More importantly, public policy. There are very strong advisors to governments, especially Western countries, whose views are respected by the leaders, politically elected leaders. So public policy is a major area where American Indians have made significant contribution behind the scenes. They may not be in the limelight, but they are very influential. So inspiration, influence, etc., they've done a good job. Academic leadership, of course, already we talked about it. I was surprised to find that as many as 29 or 30 major universities, presidents or chancellors are of Indian origin now. Of course, in management school, like which was mentioned by someone else, we are quite dominant. But I think academic leadership, and again, we are trying to analyze what makes somebody succeed as a dean, as a provost, as a vice chancellor, or as a president of a university. What background does it need and why does it happen? People of Indian origin. Hospitality industry is another very big one. More than 40% of all of the hospitality hotel units are owned by Indians now in America. Net worth is estimated to be about $200 billion. They're all very wealthy in small towns, but they are millionaires. And the last one, and a very important one, is that entrepreneurship is not limited to Silicon Valley or technology. Two great examples. A company called Deep Foods, starting with Chevda, a Gujarati family, has become a multinational truly with about $1 billion revenue now. Their valuation is outrageous, maybe about $10 billion, because in consumer packaged goods, valuation of revenue multiple is about 10 times. Then you see a granite and marble company called MS International. From nothing, two sons joined the parents. Both went to Wharton School, worked with investment banking, quit that to become part of the family business. From nothing to less than $100 million, it is a $3 billion importing granite and marble. Largest supplier to Home Depot, which is a very large in-home improvement business, for example. But you can look at the journey of those kinds of people in what I would call non-technical businesses. There are so many great examples. All of this ultimately says that in higher education, we can take the lead by the three approaches that I mentioned. Online education is a very important component, blended education if you wanted to, focusing on vocational education, not limited just to technology, but like culinary art, making great chefs, hospitality industry. Most of them are non-technical, non-technology especially. So vocational technical education is a very important platform. And the last one is inviting foreign top universities not to invest in the capital dollars, but co-locate with existing infrastructure so that the cost of and faculty can be shared, students can be exchanged, but in a physical place called India, as opposed to Indian students coming over here. In fact, as one of my colleagues on the panel mentioned, without the Indian foreign students, or Chinese for that matter, or Korean now, all graduate programs in America will collapse. The real talent and hard work is those postgraduate or graduate PhD students. That is also true in our literature, for example, philosophy, for example, but in technology, it's very important. science and technology. So the campus, a research-oriented campus, has to go to where the students are. I always say, if you're looking for gold, you go to where the gold mine is. And the gold mine in talent is India. And I'll make one last comment, which is my personal experience. If you take a grain of wheat and make it into a loaf of bread, the value add is only about 3 times. Agricultural raw material is about 1/3 the cost of the bread that ultimately is consumable. If you take a rough diamond, an industrial commodity, a good diamond cutter will polish and make it into about a 15 to 20 times valuation. But if you take a human being, mentor, educate, nurture, the value add is infinite, which is the reason why India is destined to succeed and become a global leader. More on the services side, it will become definitely a service capital is our forecast very soon, surprisingly. The world has a shortage of qualified, certified talent. And last comment I will make, and I'm taking a little longer than I should, but I understand KPMG has just signed a contract with one of the universities in India to train 10,000 accountants, not for export, but in India. They'll be hired by KPMG as employees. Will become one of the largest accounting advisory services. As Ernst & Young already has a 50,000 students working in one location in Hyderabad, for example, all in the tax advisory services area, not just the audit side. And now Ernst & Young, Deloitte, they're all looking for Indian talent to stay in India, but then bring them over here because of the immigration issues, political issues, etc. Overall, Indian diaspora can be very proud of what it has done, but I have 3 recommendations. The immigrant generation is a good bridge between the two. But the next generation, as we have our children and grandchildren go to top universities, we have to make sure that they don't forget their roots. Indian values are very important, more and more needed today than ever before, given the acrimony that's taking place in the public discourse, social media, etc. It also requires taking care of parents. One of the biggest issues we are all facing is parents as senior citizens aging, their kids are not taking care. How do we inculcate the value to taking care of your parents because they invested in you? That's a value system which is our traditional value system that we need to make sure that they follow rather than become westernized too much. And the last one is a sense of gratitude and humility. With success, we all tend to think we did everything ourselves. But there's a whole ecosystem that supports you to make it who you are. My research shows you that most business successes are by accident, not by plan. In fact, 65%, if they'd gone on a business plan, that prayer would have failed. It goes on across industries. So we have to understand that it's the ecosystem that is making who we are. And therefore, we need to be having a sense of gratitude, but more importantly, humility. Making money without meaning is meaningless. It makes billionaires lonely inside. As being personal advisors and coaches on a one-on-one, you find that thing. They're very lonely inside because they didn't serve a purpose in life. So purpose goes along with business success. This is the kind of a thinking in management that we need to inculcate more and more as we create a strong partnership between America and India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have with us Mr. Sabir Bhatia, a person who is not only known in the field of industry, but also in the field of academia, who has always experimented new business theorems. Mr. Sabir Bhatia is a businessman who has co-founded the first free web-based email service, hotmail.com, And I remember that when we were entering into the universities, this was something where everyone used to give his example. In 2021, he co-founded Showreel with his co-founder Haji Abraham. Showreel initially focused on connecting users through short videos for job seekers and founders, but now it has turned into AI-powered learning platforms. Mr. Bhatia briefly worked for Apple as a hardware engineer and firepower systems incorporation. He, along with his colleague Jack Smith, set up Hotmail in July 1996, symbolizing the freedom from ISP-based email. This was 4th July, American Independence Day. And since then has been coming up with very innovative models in business. We'd like to understand from you, Mr. Sabir Bhatia, that what is the story of your success, of your struggle, and how you see that Indian academic system, Indian universities can contribute most significantly in the US education space also.
First of all, thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak here. It's pretty early in the morning over here, but it's quite interesting to see different points of view. I have a very contrarian, maverick point of view, so I hope I don't offend anyone. I will let you know ahead of time that I do not believe a word of anything that all of you have said, because we are at a point of such massive change because of AI that the traditional form of education is almost irrelevant today. And I will give you my personal example too. I went to two of the finest universities, Caltech and Stanford. Nothing that I studied, I have actually used in my real life, because the problems, what is going on in the world is moving at such a fast pace that if you learn accounting, computers can do it better. If you go to the legal field, computers will do it better. So what does that leave us in this world of, in this age of automation? Everything is becoming automated. So the traditional forms of education, I heard a lot of you say real estate, build more universities. I see a problem in India. The problem is India has the greatest intellectual capital on planet Earth. Young people whose minds we can turn into something productive. If we were to follow your route of building universities, somebody spoke about costs of $70,000, $80,000, $220,000. In my lifetime, we will not be able to solve how to change the minds and make use of the true intellectual capital of, say, 70% of India, which is about 1 billion people, under the age of 35. We need to educate them. So the next question is, what do we educate them in? Somebody spoke about skilling, vocational training. All that is easy. You can learn all of that today. What we need to really educate them is in critical thinking. If you ask me, what did I take away from Caltech and Stanford? Not the content, not the coursework, it's the ability to think, to identify problems and solve them. Part of the problems were technical. The other part of the problems were human interaction, convincing people, doing this, and frankly, thinking outside of the box. Today, if you look at companies, we are still educating our people to do traditional manufacturing, vocational, this, that. 35 out of the 50 top companies, and if you leave aside all of the oil producing companies and commodities companies, are all in the IP space. They all started with ideas. We have to teach people to think of new ways of doing old things and doing them better, using technology, using automation, using AI, using everything that is at our disposal today. And traditional education, I'm sorry, is not good enough. It doesn't teach you all of this stuff. It just teaches you a body of knowledge. You study it and you regurgitate it. You get high marks and you get... Today, that is irrelevant. If you just have to look at the top 5 companies in the world, Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, Meta, they're all not hiring any more people. In fact, they're just letting attrition take care of the people that they currently have. Why? Because AI is taking away human jobs. Nobody seems to have got this message from academia. You know, we've got to embrace AI wholeheartedly. Hence, the course, Showreel is a way to teach people critical thinking online in an automated way at mass scale. Because the tutor is AI, the evaluator is AI, and we're just asking people how to think. We're teaching them how to think. That is the most important goal of academia, how to think, not learn this, learn this, learn this. It's useless in this day and age. I can learn everything I want through YouTube, through online courses, and here people are talking about building more universities. They're all real estate projects. I'm sorry, that is not what is required for the future. Today, I am sitting on, I'm doing 4 companies, and any one of these 4 companies could dramatically change the world. I don't have any physical location. Everybody is working remotely. They're all ideas. When I see the latest Indian education, the Indian budget, it says we have earmarked 500 crores towards AI education. And I said, that's great, fantastic. They're going to invest in, 500 or 1,000 new AI ideas that will hopefully change the world. And when I actually read the budget, it says we will build a center for excellence with 500 crores, a real estate project. People don't know what vision is. Vision, in their opinion, is building a real estate project. Oh my God. You go and see the Infosys campus, I was disappointed. Massive campus, great buildings. I'm like, you guys are dead in 5 years because you do low-level coding, which can be done by AI much better than humans. You haven't gotten the message that the world is about innovation, not about repetitive work. Professor Jagdish, sir, you said that India's services sector is dead. It's going to die either, I can't predict if it will die in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years. But low-level coding work, which is just labor arbitrage for getting some stuff done cheaply, is over. Goldman Sachs today uses a piece of software that 51% of all the code that they write now is being done by AI. What does that tell you? You have to look at the future. I mean, we have to take a careful look at what we are teaching kids. Traditional education is finished, over. You guys are all living in the past. I'm sorry. Because critical thinking is the one thing that you should be teaching every kid, because that is what is required for the future. I mean, look at San Francisco today. Uber is a massive $60-70 billion company. Waymo over here has driverless cars. Now, they're just operating in a few markets. It's only a matter of time that, the human involvement, like Uber stuff, it goes away. Because I feel more safe sitting in a driverless car than in a car driven by a driver who can be distracted, who can look at his text message, who can do this, that. That is the world. That is the future. And we have to prepare kids for the future. And I think the only course that we should teach them is how to think critically. Give them problems, have them solve problems, and, have them make use of all the technology that is at their disposal. Today, let them learn through sources like YouTube, online sources. I mean, I didn't know. I went to school in 1991, and the AI then is very different from AI today. I had to reteach myself and unlearn everything that I learned. And I spent the last 4 or 5 years, and I've figured it out by just taking online courses. That is the future. You guys are still talking about building buildings and doing this and doing that because you are just solving for the economic problem, not really the core value, which is to teach people how to think critically, because that is the skill that will be most in demand, in the next 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. Because by 2030, more of our world GDP will be produced by machines and AI than by humans. And in that world, what do we leave kids with? What do we teach them? We teach them to be imaginative. We teach them to think outside of the box. We teach them to solve new problems that have never been solved before. Not do the same thing, follow this, and you'll make a little money and lead a good life. Those days are over. And I think education has to also catch up with the thinking of the rest of the world. I'll stop there. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Mr. Bhatia, Dr. Singh, before you come in, I just want to comment, Mr. Bhatia, I really appreciate your views, and it's difficult on a panel to take such a contrarian view, but everything you've said is thought-provoking. I would like to come to San Francisco and meet you sometime, and we will discuss more. I want to share a little bit more what we are doing in AI and critical thinking and other aspects, but not for today's panel, but always
Sure.
good to challenge the status quo and have a discussion. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. I think very interesting views and new theorems, as the word knows that you always give the views which are thought-provoking and which have given the new direction to people. I think that we have noted down very carefully, and sometime with our Chancellor, we will surely come to you and discuss that what we are doing in AI and how MIT is changing and trying to look at the education from a different angle. But great to have your inputs. We have with us Dr. Rahul Srivastava, again, a noted innovator, scholar, and higher education leader. Dr. Srivastava has served as an executive vice president and provost at Indiana University, Bloomington since 2022. He leads daily operations of the IU campus, serving more than 48,000 students, 3,000 faculty, and 10,000 staff, with an annual operating budget of $2 billion. His portfolio includes 17 schools, 8 vice provost areas covering undergrad and graduate education. We'd like to understand from you, Professor Srivastava, that what is your story, how you came to US, and then what is your message to everyone that how we can strengthen US and North American universities with Indian universities.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you for the whole panel. It's great to listen to all your perspectives, and I'm really honored to be a part of this esteemed group of individuals here. Good evening, everyone on attending this. I am Rahul Srivastava, as Dr. Singh just mentioned. I'm Provost and Executive Vice President at Indiana University. And let me first start by just saying thank you, and I'm deeply thankful to you, Dr. Singh, and MIT University for involving me and inviting me to this great session. As someone who was born and raised in India, and now has the opportunity to work in both India and the US, in not just the academic world, but in the private sector as well as in the government side, I've had the privilege of experiencing firsthand how powerful the intersection of these two vibrant cultures can be. I actually grew up in MP, Jabalpur, Indore, Bhopal, even spent some time in New Delhi. I did my undergraduate, graduate education in Mysore. And in the US, I've had the opportunity to live in 4 different states: Indiana, Florida, Michigan, and in Georgia. Unlike many other people in this panel, I'm not an engineer. I don't have an MBA. I am an entrepreneur of sorts. And Mr. Bhatia, you've been an inspiration for many years. It's great to see you here. My career actually is more related to healthcare. I started as a speech pathologist and audiologist, but as you've heard from other people on this panel, life doesn't go in a linear way. It takes zigzags, it takes different turns, and it's up to you as an individual to jump on an opportunity when it comes. And that's how I find myself where I am. I've launched a startup, I've done administrative work, I've worked at the VA Medical Center, different universities. It continues to be a great journey, and I'm excited I can share some of my thoughts and experiences with you tonight. Again, just echoing what others have said, Indian American scholars and leaders have been a huge source of inspiration, not just in academia and industry, but increasingly in literature and art and music, everywhere else. Their work is shaping the future of so many fields, from sciences and medicine to education. You'll find, Indian Americans are behind so many discoveries, solving complex problems, leading companies, driving innovation. Sometimes you know of people, the CEOs I have on my PowerPoint here, but there are so many more behind the scenes that are driving change and change in a positive, rapid way, particularly in this fast-moving world. I want to just highlight a couple. Subra Suresh, for example, Professor Suresh or is an Indian American academic, served as the 9th president, I think, of Carnegie Mellon, led the National Science Foundation, currently with Brown University. He's been advancing science and technology, particularly in biomedical research and engineering, in ways that have such massive impact. All the AI and things that we talk about today have been grounded in basic work done largely through funding from NSF. Another great example is Dr. Anant Agarwal, professor at MIT. You've known of edX, the big platform. He co-founded it, was the CEO, and it literally opened up a new way of educating. Again, echoing what Mr. Bhatia said about leveraging technology. In that case, it was massive open online courses or MOOCs that really changed the game in many ways and expanded education with a global footprint. There are many other Indians and Indian Americans who impact our daily work and lives. But what stands out to me about many, or for most of these individuals, is not just how they push the boundaries in their fields of work, but how they lead by example. They almost always start at the bottom and rise up. They tend to do the work before they ask others to do the work. And what you see is these individuals continue to serve as mentors, as guides. They're trying to inspire the next generation to reach even higher. They inspire us not just by their achievements, but also by the way they work and the way they lead. And the typical characteristic is leading with humility, leading with grace. And that is something you don't see too often at the scale as you see with this culture. And I think our first couple of speakers mentioned this, that there is a cultural aspect that really helps drive this very effectively. The Indian American educators and leaders have introduced brilliant ideas that have shaped so many different fields of study. What's unique about higher ed, particularly in the US, is that research, discovery, education, advancement of knowledge, they're all core mission of the higher ed, particularly the research-based higher ed institution. It's just as important to advance knowledge in a large research university in the US as it is to work with students, teach a class, or student development. It's a very powerful combination. The energy, the passion, the curiosity that young students bring, you couple that with the expertise, the knowledge, sort of the research expectations of faculty, and that leads to scientific advances at a very rapid pace and at a scale that you don't see being replicated too many other places in the world. Another key to generating new ideas is the ability to take some risks. It's really difficult. It's not easy for everybody to do it because the flip side of taking risks is failure. And many people struggle to get that right balance, right? If you have enough risk tolerance, you can always generate new ideas. But if you go too far, you can bring a whole system down. So having that right balance is really critical. And workplaces, whether it's labs, whether it's institutions, companies, or even small teams within a larger organization that have the right balance of risk tolerance and risk aversion tend to be more successful than ones that go one way or the other. And what we have to do in higher ed in general, in my opinion, is build that resiliency that allows you to be risk tolerant in a way that doesn't bring the system down. And I think this is my way of kind of addressing what Mr. Bhatia was saying. Critical thinking is important. It's really critical, no pun intended there. But it doesn't come in isolation. It only comes when you have a basis of knowledge. You can't start with critical thinking. You have to have some facts before you get to critical thinking. And that fusion, when you do that right, has results that are more powerful than one or the other. And that's the difference, and that's sort of the magic formula that I think about all the time in my role as provost at Indiana University. How do you create a culture of risk tolerance? How do you empower students or faculty or staff to generate new ideas while always ensuring that the system itself doesn't collapse because it's so risk tolerant that you don't build resiliency into it. It's not an easy problem, but I'm really proud to say what we have been doing has been showing really tremendous results. The other part of this is it's not just the ideas themselves. True innovation and the really transformative ideas often come from interdisciplinary collaboration, whether it's engineering or social science. And you see the Indian American academics are really excelling at that. They're bridging divides. They're bringing together expertise from diverse domains to address truly some of the world's most pressing problems. Almost every discovery you can think of today that has dramatically altered our lives that we live in comes from teams that work with complete disregard to conventional disciplines or academic boundaries or business strategy domains. You think about things like the internet, or you look at the mRNA vaccines or discoveries on subatomic particles or antimatter. None of those would be possible if you don't put teams of people, sometimes dozens of people, on truly big projects, hundreds, several hundred people working across disciplinary expertise, but trying to solve a common problem. That, to me, is the differentiator between truly successful higher education institutions in the coming decades than ones that tend to reflect the more conventional department by department, discipline by discipline education or research labs or pedagogical practices. The critical component in making these teams effective is actually communication. How effectively can you bridge these gaps when people approach a problem or a tool or bring a sort of an approach to solving a problem that is so grounded in completely different disciplines that they could actually disrupt teams rather than meld them. Now, this is where, growing up in India or being truly connected to that culture really helps. In India, if you travel a couple of 100 kilometers, you listen to a different language, you see different clothes, you eat different foods, and you don't appreciate how well it prepares you for these big tasks, because what you consider as just normal life is not normal outside. Again, I'll hark back to what Professor Raghunathan said. It's that ability to appreciate different perspectives that really helps people drive change in a way that is not possible under routine circumstances. This is the precursor to developing big dreams and big ideas. Again, in my role as provost at IU, I'm always looking at opportunities to creating spaces or organizational structures where ideas can flow very freely, collaboration can happen naturally, and innovation is a daily part of the life we do. It takes a lot of time, and it takes us to dismantle old structures and rebuild new ones. But when that works, the results are absolutely spectacular. The next thing I want to talk about is just ideas or just innovation doesn't lead to impact, right? There is another step that you have to do beyond innovation and beyond just let's come up with a great idea. We have to think about how you go from an actual idea to its implementation to its actual impact or use in the real world. I'll just give you a personal example. This about 20 years ago, I was helping a patient with hearing loss. He had received a cochlear implant. He had just had his surgery and was getting better, more accustomed to listening through that implant. He was doing pretty well by that standards. And by pretty well, I would say about 70, 75% accuracy. It was good, but not good enough. So he came to me, he said, I'm not happy, can you help? We decided to work together on improving his performance, probably over a course of a year, and I would say no less than 100, 150 hours of testing. We hit a way where we could get him to perform at 90, 95%. Now, that's a game changer. For those of you in my line of work, the gap between 70 and 90% is being able to communicate in a straight, quiet, face-to-face environment versus talking while you're driving or talking in an airplane or having a conversation in a restaurant, which means you're recovering life as normally is. It's a game changer. So great idea, good innovation. We got that. We decided to try and take it to everybody else. And we said we immediately hit a problem in that the technology, the tools, the approach we built, it took 20 hours. And most patients did not have 20 hours to devote to testing to make it happen. So then the implementation part took several $1 million and about 5 years of work before we could take that same technology, compress it into about a 20-minute test procedure, and make it viable so it could be done at scale. So we have to think not just about ideas and innovation, but think about the process that takes it to actual impactful, usable approach. And it takes a while before we can achieve the same level of accuracy with sort of converting the idea to its final form. Next, as we think beyond this, what we have to do is to find ways in higher education to close the gap between when a discovery or innovation is made to how we take it to the point of completion. At IU, we are doing this under a framework called IU Innovates. It's a series of intentional programs offered to all our faculty and students. If you work in a lab or you work in a studio, if you're working on a project, you come up with a discovery, how do you then take it to a implementation stage? How are you able to take it seamlessly and turn it into a development? Maybe it leads to a startup, maybe it leads to a nonprofit, maybe it leads to a policy document. But when you think about the whole picture, from generating the idea, doing the basic science, all the way to the implementation of prototyping, strategizing, business plan development, and actual implementation, that is when you complete the full ecosystem and have a really, truly meaningful impact and a successful student or a faculty. At IU, I'm proud to say we are playing a big role in, it's our mission to improve both the education, but having an impact at the world around us. Today, IU is home to about 90,000 students. More than 6,500 are international, hailing from 166 countries. You walk at our student union, it's like walking through a global summit. It's just amazing. Amongst those students, obviously, Indian students make up probably our largest contingent, with nearly 3,500 students from India. I think that's the statistics for our current semester. We are about halfway into it. It's about 4% of our student population. That's a big number, and it speaks to the strength and depth of the Indian student presence at IU and our deep partnership with India. Indian students are primarily focused on fields like computer science or business, but increasingly seeing more in health professions, environment, sustainability, interdisciplinary studies, arts, and it's fascinating to see that evolution from where it was a decade or two decades ago. We also have the privilege of hosting about 150 visiting scholars from India every year, and that really helps strengthen our academic connections between India and Indiana University. We continue to establish deeper and more meaningful partnerships in India. The relationships between US and India are certainly between IU and India have never been stronger. And I hope to see us cultivate it deeper in the coming years. One of our key connections in the region is the IU Gateway, which was opened in 2014. It's a part of a gateway network that we have at IU. It has 6 strategically located offices in the ASEAN region, China, Europe, Mexico, and most recently in Western Africa. The Indian Gateway helps us build research collaborations, provide opportunities for students, obviously help us recruit highly qualified students. It helps us connect with alumni and increase the visibility of IU in India. The Gateway has been instrumental in facilitating a number of partnerships, joint research programs, academic exchanges, and just fostering a much deeper connection across 2 countries and their higher education systems. It's helped students experience study abroad and cultural programs. I know it's been a priority for the institution, but also the US Embassy for many years. Graduate students in information systems. Some of you are familiar with the Kelley School of Business. They've been visiting India every year to connect with industry experts and academics. In fact, there's a group of them heading back in a few weeks. Another group from IU Indianapolis will be visiting India also in late March 2025 as a new program with UPES in Dehradun, which is one of IU's many partners in India. We've teamed up with many Indian institutions like OP Jindal, Flame, B.R. Ambedkar University in New Delhi. We've expanded our partnerships with Amity is a big one that I'm proud to be part of today. UPES, as I mentioned earlier, Amrita Vishwas Vidyapeetham, and many others. The collaborations help IU benefit from the intellectual resources of both countries. It helps us focus on internationalization. I know that's a big priority for many higher ed institutions in India. We have the India Studies program. It offers cultural but also language training. It's one of very few in India of it, in the US of this kind. You can take courses and offers not just in Hindi, but a number of other Indic languages as well. And what we start to see is impact. We have a lot of alumni in India now, nearly 13,000. I was there last year visiting, and I want to highlight 2 or 3 of our very famous alumni just as examples. And since we are talking the breadth, I want to mention 3 in particular. One is Dr. Deshpande. I was fortunate to just meet him the other day, a pioneer in IT, AI. It's just amazing to see the energy he brings. He's always one step ahead of where the world is. He's thinking maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of what the world will be as AI or other technologies become pervasive. Obviously, everybody there is familiar with Ranveer Singh, person with tremendous success in the entertainment business. He was an alum from here, I believe 2008. And then I mentioned public policy and politics, and we have a long-term MP and elected official in India as somebody we count as one of our alumni. He's an alum from IU's Kelley School of Business, earning his MBA, specializing in finance and strategy. I want to sort of end with a little bit about the US-India partnership. The relationship between the two it's more than just about business and people movement. It truly is one about shared values, from promoting democracy and human rights to tackling global challenges like climate change, public health. And because of that, I think it will stand the test of time more. It has more resilience than any other bilateral relationship. It's already, the US is India's largest trading partner, and most important export market. In 2024, US and India achieved a record-breaking bilateral trade in goods and services. I think it's almost $130 billion. Many US companies view India as a critical market. I heard that from multiple speakers today and are finding ways to expand their operations. Likewise, Indian companies are seeking to expand their presence in the US market. By end of 2023, India had invested more than 17 billion in the US, making it the third largest investor among BRIC nations, and the fastest growing, with investments nearly tripling over the last 5 years. The Indian investment in US as of last year's statistic, if I remember right, supports over 70,000 American jobs. In the educational sector, the US and India connections continue to strengthen, benefiting both the academic exchanges, research partnership, and obviously student mobility. You've heard this before too, 331,000 Indian students, making India the largest source of international students in the US. These students contribute more than $8 billion annually to the US economy. Their financial contributions is huge, and it's not just on local economies, but a broader impact on cultural and idea exchange that tends to amplify with time. The US-India partnership it's not just, as I said, not just trade and education. It truly is a shared effort to have an impact in the world through innovation and global collaboration. And the Indian American community is at the heart of all of this, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in academia and beyond. So let me simply end by saying I am truly incredibly proud of the role we all play in this global network. As we look into the future, I think it's clear that collaboration, inclusivity, and innovation are the way for us to move forward. Whether we are in the classroom, whether it's in businesses or any of the field we work in, we have an opportunity to continue building on an incredible legacy of the Indian American community and take it to new heights. And I know as deep as these connections are, it's only going to expand from here. Thank you very much again, Dr. Singh. Thank you, Amity University, for hosting this important conversation. And thank you to everyone here for your dedication to making education and the world a better place. Let's keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible together. And in closing, I truly appreciated visiting Amity last fall when I was there. It was a delight, an absolute delight to meet the students and the faculty and see the energy and the excitement and the inertia in India within the student body and the businesses and higher ed is continuing to propel the world forward. So thank you for what you all are doing to play that part.
Thank you, Professor Srivastava, and we look forward to welcoming you again when you are in March in India and taking a step forward to further strengthen our partnership. But great views, our compliments. We will now go to Dr. Julia, our good friend from Canada. She is the President and Vice Chancellor of Yorkville University and is in charge of 3 campuses in Canada. A great advocate of critical thinking, leadership, and social responsibility. Keep on experimenting new things, new theorems. We would request our good friend, Dr. Julia, to share her views that how Canadian, American, and Indian universities can come together and can strengthen their partnerships.
Thank you, Gurinder. It's such a pleasure to see you again. And I look forward to visiting you in April. So it sounds like you're going to be busy with welcoming guests. And I thought I'd also share that I've just recently joined the Association of Indian Principals, and looking forward through that network, making a broader contribution to higher education in India, and couldn't be more pleased to be invited to speak today. I thought what I do is just remark on the 3 presentations I've just had the pleasure of hearing. So thank you again for this opportunity. I've been so fascinated by what everyone had to say. Rahul, perhaps I'll start with you. Before I joined Yorkville, I was the founding dean of the Lang School of Business at the University of Guelph. And in that role, I was attempting to do a lot of what you are doing so successfully. So I just really want to congratulate you for all of your success. I really believe that a business school could make its best contribution, not just by teaching students, undergraduate and MBA students, but providing business education across the institution. So many people talk about STEM in Canada. I don't know if that's the same in India and the US, but science, technology, engineering, and math. And drawing from a famous US-based company, 3M, known for its innovation, I always say STEM needs at least 3 more M's: money, markets, and management. And to me, it's when those skills come together with students in the STEM disciplines that don't sometimes naturally think that way. It's when it comes together that I really believe the magic happens. So I just wanted to share that I really support your passion for interdisciplinarity. And when you take that approach and then add on the values that you're reflecting and that commitment to having business and STEM work on projects that are going to improve the world, that's, again, when I think the magic happens. And so when I was a business school dean, we were signatories to the United Nations Prime Initiative, so Principles for Responsible Management Education. So there's around 700 business schools from around the world that have committed to teaching ethical business. And I think that's so critical because so much of business and innovation is actually exploitative. And we need business leaders that make commitment to decent business practice, whether it's talking about the environment, employees, community, creating products and services that the world actually needs. So I had the pleasure of addressing the United Nations General Assembly in New York City on behalf of those business school signatories and really making a call for more business schools to start thinking that way. So that was just, that was a real honor, and that was an exciting time for me at Guelph. And then here at Yorkville, I wanted to move on. I'm sorry that Sabir has left, I think, because I found his remarks so provocative. And I am a self-described higher ed disruptor. And my own disciplinary background is organizational behavior. And I've always been fascinated by the stated vision of the organization, like what is its purpose? And then how do we align human behavior and systems to get everybody working towards that? And what I'm seeing right now, and I know it's in Western universities in particular, and Canada is feeling it very profoundly. Most of Canada's major universities are now posting annual deficits of 30, 40, $50 million. So it is not a sustainable business model. All of this money tied up in infrastructure, when we know that if you take 4 or 5 years learning something before you actually get to apply it, it's probably become largely irrelevant. Although I get your point that we need to marry knowledge and skills. There has to be a knowledge base. But I'm really feeling that the traditional model of public higher education in Canada is not sustainable. Now, part of that is because of what the Canadian government has done to restrict the flow of international students into the country. And from my perspective, the government was way too keen to prop up our GDP with the flow of international students without ensuring we had the infrastructure in place to support that kind of rapid growth. So it's been a real disappointment of mine because I truly believe that international students like you're finding, Rahul, can really enrich the learning from everyone and help people develop global networks. But in Canada, the balance got out of whack. So that's a real shame. We do remain open to international students, of course. Around 30% of our student population is currently international, but I fully expect that to go down to about 20% over the next couple of years because of the federal government's restrictions. But the message I'm going to be delivering to Amity and the spring, Gurinder, is that means being accepted into Canada is going to be a more prestigious, more selective process, and with the assurances of proper infrastructure to support that student's learning and helping them achieve citizenship and a great job in Canada. So lots to correct for there. But what I really wanted to say to Sabir was that 70% of our students are learning fully online asynchronously. So even though we have campuses across 3 provinces in Canada, the vast majority of our students are domestic Canadians, average age 36, earning graduate degrees online asynchronous while they're working full-time, taking care of their families, contributing to their communities. And I agree with him. I do think that's the future. There will always be a market for people who want to send their children to a bricks and mortar undergraduate school. There will always be the need in STEM for labs. So I'm not saying they'll disappear altogether, but I think it'll become, over time, it will not be the dominant model. So I just found his remark so provocative about, what is the future for higher education in India and other countries, and what might be the right balance between online and bricks and mortar. The other model that I'm playing with that I think has great merit, and this is how Germany used to do it. I don't know if they still do, but it's a true work integrated learning experience. So you are working full-time while you're pursuing your degree. It's developed in a very integrated way. So as you're learning, you're applying. And to me, that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Knowledge and implementation. And as the student attempts to apply what they've just learned in class that week, they will learn where theory works, where it doesn't. They will develop the soft skills around the implementation. I met someone when I was at WEF in Davos, a banker, a leading global banker, told me that had been his experience. And by the time he graduated with his business degree, he was appointed vice president of the bank. So like that's a different model. Rather than taking 4 or 5 years, trust us, this will be interesting, this will be relevant at some point in your future. Everything in the world is happening way too fast right now, right? We've got to be testing things. It's more of that instantaneous feedback loop that I think will help students develop the skills and the confidence that they need. And now I want to go to Professor Jagdish. Is he still there? Oh, yes, there you are. Jagdish, thank you. Okay, so I spent a lot of time working in doing research in under the topic of academic integrity. So what does it mean for students to have integrity, faculty to have integrity, university administrators to have integrity? And when I was in that space, I read this quote from Theodore Roosevelt that always stuck with me. And it's, to educate a person in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. And that always stuck with me. So I think when we talk about content and we talk about skills, at Yorkville, we have what we call our 8 signature learning outcomes. And so these are all the skills that need to wrap around the content to allow a student to be of value to society. And absolutely in there, we include things like becoming digitally capable and adaptable, but also socially responsible, to be a professional, which includes being a person of integrity, practicing ethics in your professional pursuits, as well as creativity and being self-aware. So we have hard-baked those signature learning outcomes into our curriculum. The last point I want to leave you with is when you accept that education is doing this significant shift towards skills and values development, we can no longer lecture, right? Nobody is going to learn skills and values through a lecture. If we're helping students be able to do, then we need to assess the doing. And it also means faculty have to have the skills to facilitate the doing. And in my experience, a lot of faculty lack the skills that we are asking our students to develop. So there's a tension here, right? So I think if we're really going to embrace this call to action, and I sincerely believe we are at a tipping point within higher education. I feel we have no choice but to embrace this. We are going to have to revisit how we select faculty, how we evaluate their performance, what we ask them to do. And I really believe we need to be moving back to more of an apprentice model. And so the last point I'll leave you with is I'm really proud at Yorkville. We have very small classes. None of our grad classes are more than 20. That's the average at the undergrad, although some of them tip a little higher. But no more than 40. And what we are asking our faculty to do is to be facilitators of skills and values development, along with teaching the core knowledge that the students need for their discipline. Anyway, I think I've touched on the three previous speakers that I had the pleasure of listening to, and those are my reflections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Julia. And we know you as a very good friend of Amity, and we have been working together. Please compliment your entire team. They have been very kind, and we have been discussing many new initiatives. We'll come back to you in a short while. But we have with us now Professor Raj Ichambadi, President of Illinois Institute of Technology. Again, one of the very respected academic leaders from India, who has, in a very short span of time, has reached to the height of becoming a president of a noted institution. We know Professor Raj from his old days from Northeastern, where he was leading as a in the business school as a dean, and before that in the Illinois, where he was a professor of marketing. One of the most innovative leaders. We'd like to understand from you that what is your theorem? First of all, tell us something about your contribution, that how you came to America and then how you became successful. And then in view of the new developments, what is your message? Because I think that the entire community, especially from Asia and India, they have questions that now if they go to USA, then what career they will have in the times to come. Would like to listen from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gurinder Singh. Much appreciated. Much appreciate the kind introduction. I want to, before I start, I want to acknowledge Professor Jagdish Seth, who has been a mentor to countless people, including me, has always been gracious. Very nice to see you, Professor Seth. Thank you. And it's always wonderful to talk to the Amity community. As Dr. Singh said, we've had a long relationship. I remember driving from Chicago to Champaign with you, Dr. Singh, and the kind of stories that you said. You're a master storyteller, so it was fantastic. And I also want to thank you and your team. Marut, I see you. Thank you for the kind hospitality when I was there last month with my family, etc. So to level set, we are strategic partners with Amity. And at the outset, I want to thank, I want to acknowledge the impressive job by the Chavan family. The kind of strides that you have made over the last couple of decades has been staggering. And so thank you. And it's a privilege and an honor to be your strategic partner. A very quick level set of who we are. We were founded in 1890. Illinois Institute of Technology was founded in 1890 as a noble, with a noble vision to educate students from all walks of life and provide them with technology education. We are a technology education provider with some incredible programming in engineering, computer science. We are preeminent in architecture, the first design school in the United States. Design thinking was actually invented here. We have had some incredible alumni from around the world, including from India. When you think about Sam Pitroda, when you think about Sanjay Kirloskar, Parth Amin, L.V. Prasad, Jamshid Godrej, his son Navroz Godrej, all of them, come from our institution, and they've gone on to become impactful students. So our mantra has always been marrying the rigor of the classroom education with the relevance of the real world. So over the last decade, we have pioneered a new identity for us called Elevate. Professor Julia Christensen Hughes talked about this. What we have done is we have we mandate our students that they should take avail of experiential learning opportunities over the 4 years that they are here. And our employment rate is one of the highest in the United States, 6 months after graduation. And we attribute it to the Elevate platform, where students have to do experiential learning, which effectively means that they are relevant in the long run. In the last decade, we have made progress beyond the various physical campuses that we have. We have a very strong online presence, both within the United States and globally, including a Chinese language MBA in China and a Spanish language MBA in South America. So we have a good online presence. We are also starting to think about campuses in other parts of the world with partners. We just announced a partnership in Kazakhstan with Narcos University, and so that's basically from an expansion of our footprint. I will also talk a little bit, again, this is going to echo Professor Hughes, because there are two things I think are fairly important for us. And for all the students in the audience, I will say to you, the first thing is, even though you may be in the technology education field, invest in human-centered skills, because that combination is what is going to make you unbeatable. The qualitative plus the quantitative, and if you are in the human-centered fields, have data literacy and technology literacy, because those three literacies, data literacy, technology literacy, and human literacy are what is going to make you world class. In the last month or so, I've had a lot of people, parents especially, talking to me about AI. And I always say you can't outcompete AI by becoming better in technology. But what you can do is learn how to use the technology, but invest in human-centered skills, and that is going to make you very impactful. And the second thing I will say is classroom education is important, but also invest in what I call as micro-credentials. If you are doing a bachelor's or a master's in computer science, obviously you have world-class teachers at Amity who are teaching you the latest and the best. But can you start thinking about taking a cloud computing certificate from, let's say, an Amazon or something? And these are affordable right now, so you can meld those credentials with your learning, so that you can provide a signal to your employer that you are not only rigorous, you understand critical thinking in your field, but you also are good about the relevance of the real world. One of the things that we have done is to integrate micro-credentials within our curriculum. And we have started giving academic credit so that our students are impactful, etc. So I'm going to, I know that, thank you for this opportunity. I don't want to take up too much time. Happy to always be in contact if students want to get information from us and so on. But honored to be your strategic partner, Dr. Singh. I'm a big fan of your leadership, as you know, and anything that I can do in order for us to co-create global citizens that are impactful in the world, count me in. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raj. And on behalf of Amity family, we once again thank you for all the support you have always given. Before we honor three of you, I would request our Chancellor, Dr. Aseem Chauhan, to give his concluding remarks, and then would request Marut to declare the awards.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. It's really been invigorating. So many new ideas from many close friends and well-wishers who have been on the panel. I've taken quite a few notes of new ideas and directions, and look forward to being in touch with all of you. I think the one common thread across what everyone said was around collaboration, and if we work together, we can do more. And therefore, we look forward to the dialogue that is ongoing with almost all of you in what can be done. I acknowledge Professor Jagdish Seth, you had given wonderful remarks. I had separately messaged you also, and truly inspiring to hear from you as always. You gave a very panoramic view of the Indian American experience, the relevance of both countries, and then bring it down to really the pragmatic nitty-gritty of what needs to be done to make education for both countries more relevant and what collaboration models may work. And Professor Raj, great to see you. You know, we are very proud of our partnership, and I think much more what we can do. So when you are in India next, I would also like to sit with you, have a cup of tea. And Professor Julia, it was so nice to hear your comments of other speakers. I think you summarized and then enhanced with your own perspective the different views. So Dr. Gurinder Singh, I think this is one community, one family. Everyone has one objective and one mission. That is, what can we do more for our students at all of our institutions and universities, and how can we help elevate the dialogue for education on a global scale? I think we have achieved that today and made a start, and we will continue that. But wonderful to see, and we should move ahead for the award presentations.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chancellor, sir, for these erudite concluding remarks. With this, we come to the end of the session, but nonetheless, it is always an honor and privilege to welcome and felicitate such leading luminaries from across the world, and especially, you know, our strategic partners from the United States. Sir, with your permission, we would announce the awards now. Amity is proud to confer upon Professor Raj Chambadi an Academic Leadership Excellence Award. Sir, thank you so much for enlightening all of us this evening. We are really grateful to you. Next up, Amity is also proud to confer upon Professor Jagdish Seth an Academic Excellence Award. So you're truly an inspiration for all of us in India and overseas as well. And as Professor Raj just mentioned, that you are a mentor to many of us, sometimes, you know, directly, who have been under your tutelage, and also people who keep hearing and listening all your presence on the social media. With this, we come to the last awardee of our session, Professor Julia Christensen Hughes, the Vice Chancellor and President of Yorkville University. Amity is proud to confer upon her Amity Global Academic Excellence Award. It was truly an insightful session, and as we conclude this illuminating session, let us all remember that innovation and impact are not confined by borders. The story of each Indian American that we heard today, it reminds us of the power of an idea when we nurtured with resilience and implemented with passion can reshape the world. To all our speakers, esteemed guests, and participants, thank you for being part of this journey. May today's discussion ignite new ideas, inspiration, innovation, and pave the way for a future of boundless contributions. With this, we come to the end of the US-India session of the Silver Jubilee INBUSH, the 25th INBUSH World Summit. Thank you, everyone, for joining. May I also request the IT team to close the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. All
Thank you,
faculty,
Maru.
staff, and
Thank you. Those